Hey everyone! Today I am starting a new adventure with a series of videos that I am calling You Are the Planets. And we are starting the adventure here with the moon. So this is You Are the Moon. And before I get going, I'll tell you just a bit about myself in case you are not familiar with me. My name is Tara All. Last name is spelled A-A-L, and you can find me at taraall, Taraaaal.com. And also I have a lot of videos on EA Zoom meetings channel on YouTube. But one thing about me, well, actually I should back up. I studied with Laura Nalbandian. I'm an evolutionary astrologer. I completed her program. I also am a certified soul sign astrologer through Adam Gainsbourg. And at this point, for the past few years in my life, I have been personally working with and sharing with my clients and friends a technique called Planets on the First. And Planets on the First is, well, technically you rotate the zodiac, choose a planet that you want to embody or work on in your life, and you move that to the ascendant and let that be the filter that you experience life through. But over these past few years, I still use the technique with the chart, but so much less, because really what this video series is about and what I'm about right now with astrology is living astrology as a meditation, a living meditation in your life. So choosing a planet first doesn't require an astrology program or anything fancy, truly. It just requires an intention to want to get intimate, to grow, to understand, to do everything you can to get in touch with what that planet represents in our psyche. So the series of videos, I'll go through the planets, and these are really designed for, well, one, for anybody who is learning or relearning astrology, because there's a good little chunk of basics in here, and I'm someone who's always learning and relearning astrology, so I enjoy that with other people's work and my own. The going back to the basics for me is the foundation of everything. But also these videos particularly supportive for those of us who are working with planets first, or anyone who's interested. And one thing that might turn you on to a planet first, for example, is, just use an example. Let's say that in your life you feel that you've been lacking discipline. Maybe you've been having a difficult time really taking responsibility and making life happen for yourself. Maybe you've thought about goals, but just really haven't had the gumption to see them through. And so this could be a perfect example to say, hey, maybe you want to live Saturn first for a while. Maybe you want to harness those energies of accountability, responsibility, and the ability truly to initiate what you want and to go for it, and to build satisfaction and respect and achievement from that standpoint. Or it could be simple as setting boundaries too. Saturn very much is about needing to set definition and boundaries. So that's just an example of it. So these videos, as I go through, I'll talk about the basics of the planet, but also I will at least share my experiences and ideas around how we might relate or work with them more as a living meditation. And there's no set form for this. Meditation is one of these things that really just takes your intention. There's not a form that it has to take. So digging into the moon, and by the way, this year my birthday is in July, so my last birthday, in July 2018, I chose to live, actually this time, a combination of moon and Saturn first. So moon has been very present for me, and moon in my natal chart is conjunct Mars. So moon energy, yeah, it's pretty much an all the time thing for me. And in evolutionary astrology, we describe or understand the moon as the ego in our present lifetime that is integrating the past and the present. And when we use the word ego, sometimes people have negative connotations with that. Truly, the ego is just the separate sense of self that we create in a lifetime to actually have a human person having an experience. The problem with ego, if you even want to call it a problem, is when we identify with it, right? And so the moon in many respects, is the moment-to-moment reactions that we're having in life from an emotional level. And the moon represents emotion, our emotional nature, what we need for emotional security. And, you know, for most of us, unless we're super robotic, and even then we're probably just hiding it, you know, we need that at a certain level. It just looks different for each of us. So this idea of the emotional nature, emotions are to me, the way I've learned them and the way that I've come to understand them, emotions are not just pure feeling. Pure feeling belongs to the realm of Venus. But when it comes to emotions, it is feelings that arise authentically or however they arise. And then the mind, the thinking, you know, memories, things that we hold from the past come in and mix with that feeling and then create an emotion. So an emotion isn't a factual thing, you know, it's not a logical thing. It really is I'm feeling this way and I've assigned this meaning to it, or in the past, this type of thing, you know, created this experience, whatever that looks like. And then all of a sudden, boom, here I am in an emotional reaction, right? So every day, all day long, this is what we're doing. And there's no problem with this. You know, we are reactionary beings as humans. That's really what we're here doing. And the exciting part is that when we don't identify with the reaction, and we're actually able to observe and recognize that we are the awareness behind, or the awareness, we really are, our consciousness is the space for it all to happen, right? And so awareness that we are not just the ego self, not just the created identity, not just the experience happening right now, not just the pain, not just the anger, not just whatever it is, that gives us room, and then that ego sense, or those reactions or those emotions, become a part of our awareness. You know, that becomes actually something that we work with to give us richer awareness in life, to actually expand our consciousness. But most of us, most of the time, you know, me absolutely included, we get sucked back into the reaction, right? And when we get sucked back into the reaction, we're not fully present. You know, we've regressed to some other version of ourselves, or we're living in some memory, trying to hash it out now. So the moon, you know, has all these pieces with it. The moon also, so the thing about the moon, it also is linked with home, family, roots, our sense of belonging. And this idea of belonging is a really important one, because as humans, we're looking for a place to belong. And for some of us, that's a very solid, here's my house where I live with my family. But for other people, you know, it's just a certain heart ties with people, or maybe it's in nature. But whatever it is, this idea of I have a home and I belong somewhere is important. And the moon always links us back to childhood experiences. So when you're working with moon, learning moon, living moon first, expect the child to come back and come up all the time. And if you're open to it, instead of, I can't, you know, that belongs in the past, or push it down, if you can let that feeling come, you can have a new relationship with it. So moon first can really give you this solid sense of self that isn't rocked by every single thing that, you know, gets you worked up, right? The moon, you know, has a lot to do with worrying. You know, worrying about, will I be okay? Oftentimes I feel like, for me, my moon is like, am I okay? My am I okay measure. So in every moment in a situation, when you start to feel yourself not comfortable in the environment, when the vibe doesn't feel good, you know, when suddenly you don't know if you'll be taken care of, these are moon things. So when that's coming up for you, you can know that you're in the realm of moon. And to me, all of the planets, the personal planets, represent aspects in our psyche. So everything's happening all the time, right? Everything's happening at once. It's a big alchemy where we are an alchemy of energies, but certain ones are taking the lead at certain times. And if you can recognize who, by personifying the planets in you is taking the lead, you can work with that part. You can meet that part, understand what that part needs, really observe and be aware of where you're at with that part, and you can change. You can change your perspective, you can change your situation, you can change where you come from in that moment, to make your life better, you know, to not be screaming in traffic, to not be constantly being taken down by emotional drama, you know, with your partner, because you guys trigger each other all the time, which that's what partners do. And then you go back to your respective spaces of being 5 and 8 years old or whatnot, and then you're not, you know, present for the moment. You can't get rid of the triggers, but you can start to just observe the triggers as they happen and not be taken down with them. So some other pieces about the moon habits. So any, oh my goodness, habits you have, regular habits that make you feel okay when you just say, oh my God, I can't, you know, I can't do it that way. I have to go through my ritual of blah, 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 blah. That's very moon. Moon loves that. Moon loves habits. Habits, because habits make me feel secure and comfortable. And the moon wants safety and security. You know, the moon rules Cancer, and as a sign, Cancer absolutely wants to feel safe. You know, we think about the crab archetype, right? And it, you know, running right back into its shell to hide, which of course is, you know, a literal representation of a home. But we all have that within ourselves, right? So if we want to be better moon whisperers, and, you know, a lot of us who work in astrology or counseling talk about being a moon whisperer, because that's, the moon may be the most personal part, at least astrology chart-wise speaking, that reflects a piece of us, the most personal filter that we're working through. And so if you can reach someone there, if you can speak with someone from that place, if you can honor and speak that language, you have an in. And that's the same with yourself. You know, if you can understand more about your own moon, what you need in that way, you can whisper to yourself. And in situations where you really need someone to whisper to you. So some other things here with the moon. We oftentimes, we talk about the Saturn moon as mother and father. I prefer to think about them as nurturing and authoritative figures or parents, because whether someone's sex is male or female doesn't really apply to me here. I mean, in our society, we can look back and say, hey, that, you know, moms tended to be the nurturing parents for big periods of time, but that is not always true. And so when we're working with moon, we're really looking at nurturing energy. And when I say mothering, I don't mean mothering and being that you have to be a woman. I mean that energy of like, you know, take someone in your arms. Okay, you know, you can just be who you are here, you know, get up on my lap and curl up and tell me about all your dreams, and I'm going to read you a story, and, you know, that super heart connection, and just the truth, like just the joy in nurturing and wanting to grow something, because the moon and its sign Cancer love to grow something, you know, even if it's just plants in a garden, because it's about life, right? Moon is life. Moon is reflecting the sun. And so when Dane Ruggiero talks about the solar lunar phases with the sun and the moon, you know, he talks about how the moon is, you know, distributing the light of the sun to be used in the world. And that is reflective of inside of us, you know, as within, as without. So the moon is that inner light. Comfort. I oftentimes think of the moon as the comfort zone. So you all know what your comfort zone is and what your comfort zone is not. If you want to jump in and play with moon, if you want to get more intimate with your ego self or your self image, or the you that you create that keeps you okay, safe, comfortable, whatever words you want to use, test your comfort zone. Because if you get out of your comfort zone, you're going to trigger your moon. So, you know, you may not want to do that, or you may want to if you want to be in the realm of moon. You know, I know for me, working with moon first, that's some of the richest experiences of being able to be with myself as, you know, life is arising around me, and as my own emotional roller coaster is arising, is sometimes to choose those spaces where I don't know if I'll be okay. I have a trust and a faith in something greater. But for example, if I'm going to travel to India, as I'm going to here next month, I've never been there. I've never been that far away from home. I don't really know what it will be like, you know, food-wise, bathroom-wise, you know, and these are some very like basic needs things, but, you know, Moon worries about those things. Will I be okay? So for me, some of my worries are around, you know, will there be food that I can eat that won't upset my stomach? Will I get sick? Will there be, you know, bacteria that I can't fight off? You know, it's funny because like, it's not the big things I worry about, it's those little things, but those little things prevent me from doing bigger things. But if I want to grow that part of me, and if I want to reach a new place of, hey, I can be okay, even when I don't know the zone, or even when I'm out of my comfort zone, you know, that's a good test. And you don't need to throw yourself into a boiling pot of water. You know, you could take little steps, but I feel like working with the comfort zone is a good way, you know, to test Moon, and to test to see whether you can observe your reactions as they happen, or whether you actually need to fully react to your reactions, right? And that's a moon type thing. When you are reacting to your reactions, you're gone from your present moment, right? And the Moon loves to be hooked into the past. How someone made me feel in the past, how that thing worked in the past, where that went in the past, how that threatened my security in the past, who loved me in the past. You know, there's a whole sense of like nostalgia with the Moon. So also natural rhythms and cycles. So another time when you know that the Moon is really showing up is when your body's triggered. You know, when the environment triggers you in general is also true, because the Moon is super sensitive to the environment. But when you feel it in your body, that's a sign that Moon is showing up. You know, when you have a tummy ache, if you're not able to digest food, or in the bigger perspective, not able to digest life in that moment at that time for whatever reason, not able to digest emotions, not able to digest your thoughts, whatever this is, digestion is a Moon thing. You know? So when you are uncomfortable, especially in your body, this is a time where you can really kind of jump in and say, what's happening with my Moon self? You know, what's going on with the Moon me? You know, what is it that I need, or what is it that I think that I need to be okay? You know, because the Moon has created this reality of what has worked in the past, what I know to be okay, and because the Moon has a tendency to want to control feelings, you know, so like the Moon wants to feel a certain way and doesn't want to feel other ways. And so because of that, it can manipulate the self, you know? So to want to feel a certain way, oftentimes it's just because we don't know that there's another way to feel, you know, or because we put a judgment on a certain feeling or certain thing, you know. So there's room for more if you're willing to explore. But it does take feeling uncomfortable sometimes, and the Moon doesn't like that. You know, the Moon wants to be comfortable. So there also is this huge element of mystery with the Moon, right? So hunches, intuition, a lot of psychic ability sits with the Moon, because it is the tapping into the world of symbols and images. You know, archetypes live here too. You know, the things that are deep into our souls and hearts that we all share, like this deep connection of feelings and certain concepts, you know, that apply to all of humanity. I sometimes share the Moon as being one of the most human planets. And, you know, we're all a combination of things. You know, my belief is that, you know, I'm a soul that lives forever, part of an entire energy field, which you can call source or spirit, whatever words you like to use for it. And that I'm also an individual separate self in a human body, in a human skin. So I'm working with all of it at once, but the Moon in particular is linked to the human part of it and the memories of other human bodies that I've had. You know, I don't know if it's linked to other bodies or forms in other planets. I don't know, but it doesn't so much matter to me. I just hold that space open for it. But the Moon has this connection to all the times I've been a human. You know, the Tara now, maybe it was Jim last time, and then Janie, and then Jacqueline, you know, whatever it is, but it holds those strings of ego memories. But those ego memories are never the whole of who we are, right? It's an important part to work with, but it's not all of it. So it's important to not get lost in the moon, you know. It's also important not to fully ignore the moon, you know. Larry Martin is a wonderful astrologer who I know, and he talks about, you know, don't feed your sun at the expense of your moon. And many of us do that as well, because the sun is how we feel that we are shining in the world externally, right? So especially in our society here in the West, we become focused on what I'm achieving, you know, what I'm doing, how I'm seen from an external perspective, and sometimes the internal piece can get lost. So whichever side you slant towards, the idea here is about coming to balance. So the moon also is just the feelings in our bones, you know? And I feel like ancestral memory also lies here. So everything that we remember, everything that is triggered within us isn't always a personal thing. But with the moon, we always make it personal. And that's the thing to remember. When you are taking it personally, you are in the moon zone. Okay? So me, I have a Moon-Mars conjunction in Leo in the 5th house. I take everything personally. I'm getting better at slowing down, being still, and not having to react to all of that. But my tendency, my moon's wiring, is to take it personally, right? And everyone's moon has a tendency to take it personally. But you know, depending on your particular chart and signature, you know, there may be maybe more of a tendency here. But the moon in general is personal. It's as personal as it gets. Of course it's personal with the moon. So also it's not to judge that, it's to be, well, of course I'm taking it personally. When my moon is in charge of my life drama or story or show, when my moon is the leading character, it's all personal. And that's just something to remember. There are moments when that's what you really want. You want to be as personally in as possible. You know, you don't want to have a Uranus moment every minute. You know, we're here to be human, to be in a body, to feel, you know, to react, to be sensitive, to experience life with an ego. That's why we have one. So it's not to get rid of it. It's to be present to it and work with it differently. Okay. I think that's good for that. So I want to, I'm going to go through just a brief little list of some of the characteristics of moon in the signs, or the emotional needs of moon in the signs. But I wanted to share a couple of things with you just about moon, and especially if you're into this idea of, like, if you're just learning astrology for the first time, or if you're kind of getting in and doing more of these living meditations of seeing, hey, you know, wow, when is my moon showing up? What is moon like? I was listening to Chris Cornell last night, and he has an album called Higher Truth, and there's a song called Worried Moon. And I was just looking it up on the internet, but what popped up was he was talking with Cameron Crowe, and he was explaining the meaning behind the song. And so I took down a couple of notes because it was so beautiful to me. So in the song, he's talking about having moon to tell his troubles to. But what Chris Cornell said in this little interview is, he said, you know, as humans, we believe that if it, and the it being whatever we've created as our, he calls it, that we create these confined labyrinths. And that we think that that's how they're set, and that's how they need to be. And he says that we believe that if it doesn't work, that means I don't work. And so what he says is, then you think there's going to be all this drama if I can't continue doing life, you know, the way that I know my little labyrinth or my little construction to work. And he says what really happens is it just dissolves. It's like a big poof. And there's actually not that much drama. And then he talks about this song being ultimately about having the acceptance of the end of something we thought was defining. And I thought, wow, I don't think he's an astrologer, but that was a perfect analogy of the moon, because the moon ultimately reflects constant change, right? The moon is forever being reborn, growing, waning, dying, even where the moon is in the sky and how we perceive the moon looking up there is always changing. So the ego itself likes this definition or these confined labyrinths, right? Because it makes us feel safe and secure. But the idea of letting those melt away, that is actually where the evolution happens, right? It's where you realize that you created that, but you're not bound by it. So it's like a continual of unraveling of the ego. So another, this is a beautiful book. It's called In the Light of the Moon by Carolyn McVicker Edwards. And if any of you are actually looking, I'm holding it up for you, but it's a beautiful, beautiful book with art. She goes through and talks about stories through all different cultures of the moon. It's a short, easy read, but I recommend it, especially if you're really trying to have a more experiential journey with astrology. I want to read this brief piece because to me it folds right in with the Worried Moon by Chris Cornell idea that I just shared. She says, the moon's promise turns out to be a sacred shorthand for all that I stand on. Like the loyal stems of my legs, that changing white sphere scissors me open and closed, holds me to the ground, answers me sure and silent as an animal. My life, like the moon's, cycles constantly from darkness to birth, from expansion to decline and death, then back to the beginning again. The moon is the face I call acceptance. And Mark Jones, who is a famous astrologer and therapist, he talks about the wave idea, which is that the entire ocean is Neptune and that Pluto is the deep undercurrent of the wave and the moon is the tip of the wave. But the reason why I bring this up is because he talks about love, and from a perspective of the moon, he says, it's like if you have been in love with Jamie and something happens. From the moon's perspective, only Jamie can love me, is what Mark would say. And this gets back to the idea of these confines, right? Only this will work. If Jamie doesn't love me, I won't be okay. I won't work. If my idea of myself that I am, strong, rich, and, a famous speaker doesn't work, I'm not okay. If my parents don't approve of what I do and love me just for who I am, I won't be okay. Right? These are all moon types of things to work through. But the beauty of it is it's always changing. So with the moon, you get to see a different face or a different aspect of yourself all the time. And you just can't be too attached to it because it's not the constant piece. It's the changing piece. Doesn't make it any less valuable, but there's a freedom in recognizing that just like the moon, we are going through cycles. Okay. So for all of you who like to have some individual bits of information for your personal moon sign, when it comes to emotional security, all the signs are a little bit different. And of course, with the moon, it's not just looking at the sign it's in, it's the house it's in and its aspects. But for the point of this, I don't want to get complicated. And in fact, you don't even need to worry about the sign, but it does help give it some flavor. But if you just want to work with your emotional realm, with your ego, with how you react to life, with how you digest life, with how you're open to the mystery and changingness of life, it's plenty to just be with the moon and then let the moon in you show you, in those moments. But Aries needs independence, right? Aries moons need freedom and the ability to take the lead. So Aries moon, and I think about it this way, if you want to know whether it's your moon that's being triggered or whether your moon is coming to the front of your experience, right? So, if you have a moon in Aries, and if someone tells you that you can't do it your way, and you start to get bent out of shape, pretty good chance that it's your moon that's jumping to the rescue, right? The moon is defensive. I mean, the ego wants to defend itself. It wants to keep itself sound and safe, right? And in some respects, that's just absolutely okay, I guess is what I want to say. But to the extent that we overreact to it, to the extent that we see ourselves as it, you know, if I am the image I have of myself, there's just not much room. Not much room for me, not much room for people around me, because if I have an idea of what my image is, and I'm pretty attached to it, let's just say that mine is that, you know, I'm smart, I give good advice, people like to hear what I say, right? It's not too made up, it's part of it's true. And then let's say that I'm having a conversation, you know, with someone, and they don't like what I have to say, or they don't particularly think that I'm smart or respond to me like I'm smart, or they're not just waiting on my next word to share, you know, my next piece of wisdom. If I am attached to having to be that image, I will have a problem with that person in that situation, because that person in that situation threatens my image. But if I have room for that image not to define me, then I can welcome those experiences, even if they're uncomfortable, even if they trigger my stuff, right? So I guess that's what I partly want to offer here, mostly with the moon, is to choose to work with the moon, or people that are super strong moon. You've got to get real about your reactions and about what you're actually reacting to, and whether or not it's something you really need to protect and defend, or whether it's something that you need to just let go. You know, to acknowledge, wow, feels crappy right now. I can feel myself reacting to the fact that this person doesn't seem interested in what I'm saying, but to not have to make that a problem, or to have to make that an attack on who you are or who I am. Because a happy moon is able to say, it's okay. You know, I can go with the flow, right? The moon is a watery planet. We are most all made up of water, right? I can go with the flow. So back to Aries. So in, you know, with this, the emotional need for security with Aries is the freedom to be me. But someone else doesn't give you the freedom to be you. You give yourself the freedom to be you. So the tripwire with Aries moon can be getting angry with other people for not giving you space, not letting you be you, when really it's up to you to do that. You know. So with Taurus, emotional needs for security, stability, routine, but you know, Taurus ultimately just needs to be comfortable. Taurus, you know, doesn't like too much drama. It wants to have enough to not worry about survival, to be stable, and for the environment to be pleasing. You know, this idea of feeling that, you know, things are beautiful and comfortable. So, you know, for Taurus, you know, the minute things get a little ugly, you know, which can also be true, you know, for Libra to some extent, they're both Venus ruled, you know, that'll trigger that moon. You know, the minute that a Taurus moon feels like there might not be enough, think money, think food, whatever it is, whether it's true or not, it's going to trigger the moon, which puts us into a defense strategy, right? A self-protection strategy. And when we're in a self-protection strategy, we're not open to receive, not the fullness of life. Gemini has an emotional need for security. Gemini needs communication, and Gemini needs the information. You know, Gemini wants to be in on the story. He wants to be, you know, sometimes it can be in on the gossip, but every Gemini is not a gossip. It's just the idea of connecting and interacting and learning, you know, to be forever having exchanges that, you know, give, you know, new ideas and new information, because, you know, Gemini, you know, wants to have fun and is curious and needs variety. So, you know, for things to be extremely boring, or even think about this, think about someone has a Gemini moon, or maybe you have a Gemini moon and maybe your partner doesn't like to talk too much, or maybe especially like something happens and it triggers you emotionally and you're feeling insecure. You know, you're feeling like the bottom's going to fall out, you know, or that you're just, you know, things are not going to be okay. And what you need more than anything is a Gemini moon is you need to talk it out, And then you've got this partner who is, no, I gotta take a walk, I can't talk with you. That's gonna trigger emotional security issues. Because sometimes for Gemini, especially with the moon, in the absence of words, it feels like abandonment. If there's not words, something's wrong. If people aren't communicating, something's wrong. So to be aware, of that. Words can be like I don't know, a surrogate safety, right? As long as we're talking, as long as things are happening, as long as there's a distraction, things are okay. But oh my God, things get really quiet, and suddenly it doesn't feel safe anymore. And especially if it feels like someone's not giving you the information. So Cancer, which is the moon sign, really needs emotional connection. And Cancer is a sensitive sign. Cancer likes to play tougher than it is sometimes, but Cancer is super sensitive, takes things super personal, and is very quick to clam up the minute that something doesn't feel quite okay. The other day I was just thinking about how Cancer really needs to feel like all the vibes are good, because Cancer's picking up on the undercurrents, right? All the water signs to some extent, but Cancer in particular, if some vibe all of a sudden doesn't feel personally good to me, that could give you a stomach ache right in that moment if you've got a Cancer moon. Things aren't digesting right with me, and I don't even know what it is. Cancer doesn't need to have a reason, just needs to feel something's off. But also with Cancer moon, this needing to belong somewhere, and especially to belong with someone, to have a home. So, boy, I tell you what, Cancer moon, any Cancer in general, just if you have the opportunity to go back and reconnect with your family of origin, that will open the door to your moon, right? Truly, all of us, if we go back to our family of origin, we will open the door to our moon, because it's linked to the childhood experiences, but especially when the moon is in Cancer, this, and especially, most of us didn't grow up in just the perfect environment, and there were certain ways in which we felt that maybe we didn't belong. I know there was, for a while, I used to think, maybe I could have been adopted, because I could have made up a lot better story about, where I might have come from. But, the truth is that belonging doesn't come from someone else. Belonging also comes from within ourselves. So that's the ultimate lesson for moon in Cancer. Moon, and to feel felt. Yeah, moon in Cancer needs to feel felt. Super, super important. And even better, if you don't have to say it and someone still can feel it and get it, that's the best for Cancer moon. That's like the ultimate, I can't believe you just felt me, without me even saying anything. It's like a little moment in Cancer heaven. Because Cancer doesn't like to take things direct on, right? So it can be uncomfortable to ask for what you need if you've got a Cancer moon. Sometimes, you'd rather do the workaround, manipulate the situation to try to do the things to get the person to do what you want them to do or need them to do, or to get the feeling you want to feel with them. So, yeah. So when someone can already meet you there, it's awesome. But that's you can't expect that. Cancer, in part in moon, needs to learn to directly ask for what they need, and not to expect the world to figure it out and then be disappointed when the world never does, because that's a very strong Cancer theme. All right, so then Leo. Leo, ultimately, we talk about attention and adoration, and these things are all true with the Leo moon, but ultimately, Leo moon wants to be loved, and Leo moon wants to be loved just for who she or he is. But, most of us, it's pretty scary just to show up as we are all the time, and so especially when we're working with the moon, which creates a certain image, ego image. So if a Leo moon really wants to be loved, oftentimes it could have spent, big portions of its life trying to be ways that are likable and lovable, and the other piece about Leo moon is there is a need to express oneself and to be creating in the world. And this doesn't have to be art projects, right? Creative self-expression can be in the way you cook a meal, can be in the way that you lead your business, can be, creative expression can be in any form. It can be in the children that you have, which is ruled by Leo. But Leo moon needs to be creating life, you know, in some way, from the heart, with passion, with inspiration, right? Because Leo needs to be able to shine. You know, this is like taking the moon, which is the inner light, and putting it in the sun outer light sign. So a lot of light involved here. From the inside out is how I feel about the moon in Leo, right? The moon. I shine from the inside out, which means you can't escape any part of yourself if you're going to do a Leo moon fully. So triggers, you know, around that Leo moon can be people not noticing you, people not giving you approval, or you know, not being the teacher's pet, not being the favorite friend, not getting, you know, the first look, people not rushing over to say, oh my God, I'm so happy to see you, right? Anything with Leo that all of a sudden makes you feel like, whoa, wait a second, you know, because there's this element of Leo that feels like, again, at any moment people should recognize who I am and roll out the red carpet, you know, because wanting to be special. So, and we'll be willing to jump through hoops, you know, oftentimes. Not every Leo, because some Leos will, you know, stay in the sidelines because they're afraid of humiliation, but ultimately anything that seems like being received in a way that is not full of, wow, you're awesome, is going to trigger a Leo moon. Yeah. So Virgo, as far as emotional needs for security, this is, you know, Virgo ultimately wants to be of service. You know, this is the idea of like having a work project, you know, like it could be a job, but it also can be taking care of a person, but something to pour oneself's efforts into that, you know, that really makes a difference, that makes things better. So this is one thing that's important to Virgo as far as the need for security, is to feel useful, you know, and also though is to feel like they are able to make things better and they are able to make improvements. And the negative slant this can take is on the need for perfection, you know, and with Virgo, there can be a tendency either to overdo it, you know, over-organize, try to get all the details just right, or there can be the tendency to, you know, throw up your hands and say, forget it, I'm not going to try because I'll never be able to get it perfect. And the problem with both sides is that there's not room for reality, you know, which is interesting because Virgo ultimately is about, you know, reality and the real environment around us, but because there's a need in Virgo to control the external environment, the Virgo moon can get triggered when it can't control the external environment, or when it feels like it's not doing good enough, or when it's wrong, you know. So any kind of criticism is a great, you know, oh, that's like the best classroom ever to be present with your, you know, Virgo moon. You know, someone's telling me I didn't do it good enough. Someone's telling me I didn't do it right. You know, how am I going to show up for myself with this? Because again, if that ego self-image has been that I am the one who always gets it right, now there's a situation. But if the ego image is softened and being looked at from a place of the consciousness that is greater than that, then it simply becomes a tool to use to say, okay, how can I become aware of this? I feel myself being triggered, right? What can I actually do to make it better? What does better actually even mean? You know, the thing is, like, perfection is not a thing with humanity. We're not perfect. Process improvement is a continual thing, and that's a Virgo essence right there, right? Okay. Then Libra need for security. Oftentimes with Libra, it's to be around other people, to have partnerships, you know, to have a partnership, to have social connections, right? Libra as a sign oftentimes doesn't want to be alone, or can swing from the extremes of, you know, over attachment to being with people to then going to the extreme of being alone. But in general, Libra tends to swing to the side of wanting to be with people. So part of this emotional need is that, you know, is to be linked up with people. So one trigger can be, you know, maybe there is no one at this period in your life. Maybe you have been, you looking for a life partner and haven't found them, and then the moon in Libra is going to be triggered by that. Am I always going to be alone? Where's my person? This type of thing. But Libra is not just relationships, although relationships is a big, huge piece of the field. It's also balance, balance and harmony and cooperation, working together. So, Libra doesn't like conflict. So a Libra moon is going to be really triggered if there's conflict and people can't get along, and if there's no way to kind of find this place of ease, right? So I talked about things being ugly with Taurus moon. It may be even more true for Libra moon. Ugly things, ugly people, ugly situations, become unbearable because the life container experience or the safety definitions that we've created are that things need to be pretty, right? Things need to be presentable. Things need to look good. So, poking deep into the center of something when it's not so pretty can be definitely a trigger for a Libra moon. Scorpio, emotional needs for security. Scorpio, ultimately Scorpio is an archetype of power. And so the sense of powerlessness can be a trigger, but Scorpio can work the other side too, which is, using power over others. But this idea of, with Scorpio, there also is this need to understand why. So we talk about Scorpio as, peeling back the layers to get deep inside, right? It's actually funny. It's sort of, it does the very thing that Libra doesn't want to have happen, right? Libra wants to keep the pretty image, and Scorpio wants, to rip that pretty face off and get into the guts of it. So if Scorpio moon, if you can't get to the truth, or if you can't uncover what's really going on in a situation, that's going to be uncomfortable. If things feel sketchy, Scorpio is can sniff out bullshit a mile away or a million miles away. But when someone's not being truthful, and when the situation, can't be penetrated, that can be uncomfortable for a Scorpio moon. The other thing is because there's this, so there's that side, but then there's the side that Scorpio themselves, they want to keep themselves private. They don't want to reveal, their secrets. So when someone's trying to poke into your stuff, if you're a Scorpio moon, that can trigger it, because there's a need for Scorpio to avoid vulnerability. It's like to keep on the lockdown, to keep things under control, and to keep, to make sure that no one's going to, get inside, the castle walls, so to speak. So on to Sagittarius. Sagittarius, as far as emotional needs go, there's Sagittarius needs to feel that there's more to life than just, coming home and making dinner and turning on the Netflix. Like, Sagittarius needs to live a life that's larger than life. In some respects, all the fire signs have this, built into them, because there's this need for life to be an adventure. But Sagittarius in particular, Sagittarius needs room to explore life. And it needs also for Sagittarius moon, Sagittarius, and along with the needing to explore things, there needs to be meaning. There needs to be an underlying truth. And it needs to make sense in a larger concept or a larger context. From a more simplistic level, Sag moon, honestly, a lot of times just needs to be right. And so what can happen with Sagittarius moon, who can be a very much, I've already checked it all out. I know this is how it is. This is the right way, and everyone should follow this right way. So when someone challenges that, or triggers what you believe in, your beliefs, what you think is right, what your philosophy on, life, then that can be a huge moon trigger situation, right? Because Sagittarius isn't just exploring to explore, although, it's part of it. It's actually trying to discover the greater truth about itself. If you have a Sag moon, you are trying to go as far and wide as you can. And this doesn't have to be like physical travel. You could be doing it through, certain studies, or, occult studies, or, astrology is a perfect example. Although it's ruled by Aquarius, Sagittarian is higher learning. It is pursuing different avenues of thinking, of expansion of consciousness. But Sagittarius ultimately is trying to understand itself in a greater context and trying to get back to the natural essence of who they are in the context of, the universe or the greater world. So once Sag has come to a place of, this is what I believe in, and, this is who I am, you want to put your finger in that cage, you're going to get bit. And so that is those types of situations, with your Sag moon, gives you a chance to say, hey, can I be okay with someone challenging what I believe in, or have I actually defined myself as those beliefs? That's where the trouble comes in. Because if those beliefs, if I've made those beliefs me, then anytime someone challenges my beliefs, they challenge me personally, right? And remember, this gets back to the moon and the personal aspect. Okay, Capricorn. Capricorn needs safety, structure, rules, boundaries, but these things all sound so boring, but ultimately, like, Capricorn wants to make something of themselves. So there's a need to earn respect. There's a need to accomplish something that creates satisfaction and that you can be proud of. And so structure, rules, and boundaries, those are all the things that help us reach a certain goal or a certain pinnacle, right? So, the idea behind these rules and regulations and boundaries is that we're able to get further if we actually have a groundwork, laid out. So with Capricorn, though, because respect is such a big deal to Capricorn, and also oftentimes the need with a moon in Capricorn too is to be responsible. Sometimes the need to be responsible for others, actually in situations where that truly is not the case. But the Capricorn moon can feel responsible, and oftentimes in early life, Capricorn moon had to grow up early. Maybe actually had to take care of the parents when they were a child. So this bleeds over to this emotional need to keep things safe, right? I need to make sure that the environment is okay, that people are okay, that the rules are followed, that the risks are mitigated, and that we're able to get somewhere in our lives. So all of that, you could imagine, if someone comes along and basically doesn't give you respect, or basically tells you, hey, you can't handle this situation, or why is your life so out of control, that's going to trigger a Capricorn moon. And even if you've been a Capricorn moon who never did get your shit together, it's still going to trigger it, because somewhere deep inside you're going to feel like you were supposed to, And Capricorn can take on, the archetypes of judgment and shame a lot. So when it feels like someone's judging you, when it feels like someone is putting their rules upon you, all these things can trigger the Capricorn thing, because there's similarities to Capricorn and Aries in the sense of the needing to, author and lead my own life. They both have that flavor. So, if someone comes along and makes you feel like you're not competent to lead your own life, that can be a big trigger. So for Aquarius, there is a really strong emotional need for freedom, for objectivity, to be able to, step back and not be stuck right in the center of something. So you can already imagine right off the bat, if you've got an Aquarius moon, if someone tries to force you, to talk out your feelings, in a very personal, charged way, it's going to really trigger. It's going to really trigger, because Aquarius doesn't want the personal involvement. It wants to step back and see from a different lens. It wants to see the bigger picture. The other thing about Aquarius is that there's really a need for authenticity, right? Aquarius wants freedom to show up and be who they are, but they also, want that from the world. They don't want fake, and they don't want what's already been done a million times. They want authenticity. And so, if you want to really offend an Aquarius moon, go up and tell them, that, hey, why are you creating everything everybody else does? You're just part of the herd. That, for example, would be a huge trigger. So when there's, when an Aquarius moon doesn't feel that sense of uniqueness, that can be frustrating. And it's interesting because the other side of that is alienation, right? I separate myself so much that I alienate myself from others. But those are two ends of the extreme, and triggers can happen around both of them. As triggers around that can be, I'm being left out again, which can be an Aquarius feeling or situation or way that Aquarius energy manifests. I'm being left out. I don't have a community that I fit into. Who I am just doesn't fit anywhere. That also can trigger the Aquarius moon. So either side of that. Aquarius moon also just has this need to move society in a better direction too. So to be innovative, to not just be a progressive thinker, but to take action on that progressive thinking, is important. So also an Aquarius moon finds himself in a situation maybe where someone says, either criticizes or calls them out on, not really making a difference, or not really following through on something when they could have made a difference, these types of things, because Aquarius can really pride themselves on being the ones who are really willing to, be in, sit in, stand up, go across the world to, be where change needs to happen. So for someone to accuse you of not making change or not being a part of the change, or not being willing to change, well, that will trigger that Aquarius moon. And then finally we come to Pisces, and Pisces, emotional security wise, in some ways needs to feel that the world is sensitive, because Pisces is super sensitive. And so this of needing, compassion, needing to be, have a place where there's a soft landing. Pisces, because it's so sensitive, not just to its own suffering, but to the suffering of the world, like it needs a soft place to land. And this is why we see Pisces so often escaping reality. It's because reality can hurt. So this is the one part of Pisces. So if you present Pisces with a situation of someone suffering, perhaps something helpless suffering, and without an ability for them to make it better or to actually, quote unquote, save in this situation, that can be very stressful on a Pisces moon. Pisces does not want people to be in pain. Pisces wants to make that pain go away. So this is one aspect to Pisces. The other piece of Pisces is there needs to be like fantasy and dreams and magic, right? There needs to be vision. So for Pisces, like life is not small, right? Like there's a million realms, and there are light realms and star realms and so many planets and places we haven't discovered. And for Pisces, that's all part of the reality. Pisces needs to be open to the faith and the possibility that anything could happen. So for Pisces, if you try to put something too tight into a box, or you try to basically say, hey, your dreams are not, they're not possible, give up on them now, for example, like that will squash the life out of a Pisces moon. It's sensitive, it's creative, it's imaginative, it needs space to dream, and it needs people and an environment around it to support its dreaming. And it also needs to feel connected to something greater. So, Pisces very much is an archetype of unity, meaning, we are all part of each other. So, situations where, things don't feel unified, or where there are specific labels and names and distinctions and segregations going on, that's upsetting to Pisces, because to Pisces, it's all one. There's a need to feel that we all belong in the cosmic family, if you will. So those are some examples of that. Okay, so I think that's a pretty good run through of the signs, and we're right about at an hour, which is where I want to end up. So think about the moon just before I wrap up, and if anyone, of course, if you have, you know, any questions or you want more information on living planets first or any of this stuff, you know, contact me through my website. It's awesome. I'd love to hear from you, even if you have ideas on how you know, do your own meditations with planets. But with the moon, you got to get yourself in the space of wonder. So whether this is going outside at night and just spending time with the moon, whether it's going in nature, whether it's spending quiet time with yourself to feel what, you know, arises underneath the surface, but there is an element of wonder. And I feel like to really connect with the moon, that being open to that space is really important. Now, the mystery of the moon is that things are always changing, which means every time you check back in, for example, with yourself, you know, it's changing. So you think about the moon being related with moods, right? Mood is unpredictable. I mean, certainly at times we can guess this thing might produce this, but mood just does what it does. You know, the moon is moving through its cycles, how it moves through its cycles. You have your own rhythms, how you know, rise and fall, when you like to wake, when you like to sleep, when you like to eat, even how you know, move or don't move. When you're sitting still, you know, some of us sway, some of us jitter, you know, getting a feel of that and then retaining a sense of wonder at just watching it happen. And with the moon in particular, feeling it happen. Okay, all right, that's all I have for the moon. Thank you all so much. See you next time.